You are invited to participate in our transportation planning process, regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status, or background. To read the full notice of your rights and protections, go to www.bostmpo.org/NPO_DISCRIMINATION. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. After roll call, board members may mute and unmute themselves. Always remain muted unless actively speaking. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. Find this by clicking either on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with the raise hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button in the toolbar. The chair will then call on participants. If you're on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. If you have any technical difficulties, please contact Stella Jordan via the chat box at sjordan@ctps.org or 857-702-3675. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant, with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA standards and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, please contact Stella Jordan of the MPO staff at sjordan@ctps.org or 857-702-3675. First time on the agenda's introductions, I'm David Mueller and Secretary Gina Fiandaca here. Aaron or Judy, please call the roll.
Mass DOT C2.
John Bouchard representing Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver present.
Mass DOT Highway.
John Romano here.
MBTA.
Good morning, this is Allie Klayman representing General Manager Eng and the MBTA.
Massport.
Hi, good morning. This is Sarah Lee from Massport.
MAPC.
Good morning, Eric Barassa with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council.
MBTA Advisory Board.
Hello, everybody. Brian Kane, MBTA Advisory Board.
Advisory Council.
Leonard Diggins, Advisory Council here.
City of Boston BTD.
I do not see Matt Moran at this point.
All right, thank you. City of Boston BPDA.
Not seeing anyone from BPDA.
All right, thank you. At-large city, City of Everett.
I do not see Jay Monty or Eric Molinari.
All right. At-large city, City of Newton.
Good morning. This is David Kosis representing Mayor Ruth Ann Fuller and the City of Newton.
At-large town, Town of Arlington.
Morning, this is John Alessi representing the Town of Arlington.
At-large town, Town of Brookline.
I do not see any representatives for Brookline.
Thank you. Inner Court Committee, City of Somerville.
Good morning, Tom Bent, representing City of Somerville, Mayor Katiana Ballantyne and the Inner Court.
Thank you. Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination, Town of Acton.
Good morning, Kristen Geichard representing the Magic Region on behalf of Dean Charter from the Acton Select Board.
Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham.
Do not see Dennis Giambetti.
North Shore Task Force, City of Beverly. Darlene won't be here today, so I'll move on to North Suburban Planning Council, Town of Burlington. No Melissa. South Shore Coalition, Town of Hull.
Christy Orio, Town of Hull.
Thank you. Southwest Advisory Planning Committee, Town of Medway.
No Peter Pelletier.
Thank you. Three Rivers Interlocal Council, Town of Norwood, Neponset River Regional Chamber.
Morning, Tom O'Rourke from the town of Norwood, representing the Trick subregion.
Great, thank you. Jim Fitzgerald, I see your hand up for City of Boston BPDA.
Yep, perfect. Thank you. Sorry for the delay, but Jim Fitzgerald, EPDA, representing Mary Woolman, City of Boston.
Great, thank you. And our ex officio members, Federal Highway Administration.
Good morning, Ken Miller, Federal Highway.
Thank you. And Federal Transit Administration.
No one from FTA.
Great, thank you. That calls the roll, Mr. Chair.
I think we've lost David. Whatever will we do?
Did we lose David?
Yeah, looks like he's having some audio trouble.
Okay. Well, I will step up and take over and advance the meeting. Jim Fitzgerald, do you have a question? Your hand's up.
I don't, but since it's still up, I will reference the fact that I believe Matt Moran from BTD will be joining momentarily. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to skip the executive director's report and I'm going to go to public comments. Are there any public comments? I'm not seeing any, but as always, over the course of the meeting, if you do have a public comment, raise your hands. I see actually Tom Devine from the City of Salem now has his hand raised. Tom?
Hi, this is Tom Devine from the City of Salem Department of Planning and Community Development. We have an item on Amendment 6 for retrofit of the Salem Ferry to expand passenger capacity. I just want to let you know that I'm available if any questions come up about that item.
That's great. Okay, thank you, Tom. Tegan?
Pardon. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have an executive director's report. There's usually the chair's report, which would be the
I'm
chair,
so
but I do.
sorry.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It's completely. You had to step in on the fly, so I'm.
I'm sorry. It is I thought that was the chair's report, so I totally messed up. I also see, is David back? No, I don't think, I don't think we can't hear him. So I'm so sorry, Tegan. Let me pass it back to you for the executive director's report.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's actually very brief. So we didn't skip much. I did want to provide a few staffing updates to the board and other attendees of the meeting. I do have some good news, which is that we were able to hire a manager of policy and planning. So this position would be overseeing and managing the kind of the core MPO programs that we maintain, like the equity program, equality program. So she'd be overseeing the staff who oversee those programs. And we will be bringing on Sarah Philbrick into that role starting June 5th. And so we'll be looking forward to introducing her. Eric, I saw your face, the familiar face. Sarah Philbrick was once an MEPC employee as well. And she's wonderful. We're looking forward to her starting, but we'll introduce her after her start date in June. And then I wanted to remind folks to please help us spread the word about our open positions. The two current ones are a new position for a principal analyst and travel demand modeler. Certainly a familiar sounding role for folks, but we are actively recruiting for somebody who can help us with our application of our travel demand modeling tools. And then also we are still working to hire a manager of multimodal planning and design. And then two positions that we have decided to repost, and we would ask you again to help us spread the word on these positions, are the manager position for the MPO activities team, and then also our program manager for the long range transportation plan. So those are our staffing updates. And then the next slide is today's agenda. There are a number of action items, and we will do our best to try to help navigate the various ones that are in front of the board right now. We will be asking the board to vote to endorse Amendment 4 to the federal fiscal year 23 to 27 TIP. And then we will be asking the board to release for a 21-day public review, Amendment 6 to that same TIP, the 23 to 27 TIP. And then we will also be introducing Amendment 7 on the 23 to 27 tip, which is a special case where it will be explained, but we will be asking the board to consider waiving the public review period and endorse this amendment for special circumstances. And then we will have 2 presentations. One will be a summary of the needs assessment findings by Betsy Harvey. And those are the needs assessments that are associated with our long-range transportation planning process. And then we will be also hearing from Mass DOT on updates to the Sumner Tunnel project, which, just as a reminder to the MPO board, is a project that you allocated about $22 million of funding towards in federal fiscal years 22 and 23. And that is all I have, Mr. Chair. I am happy to answer any questions.
I think David's back.
Well, I hope so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Taken. I don't know what was wrong, but now I'm back. Next item on Eric's already covered public comments. Thank you very much, Eric. Next item on the agenda is committee chairs reports. Are there any? Seeing none. Regional Transportation Council. Oh, I'm sorry, Brian Kane. Thank you, Brian.
Sorry, I'm slow. Yeah, just to note that the A&F committee met this morning to begin the process of finalizing the operations plan. I know that you've heard me talk about this for many months now. We are in the home stretch. We hope to have a draft version for the MPO's consideration in mid-June. So we are rapidly moving towards the completion of this, and it's going to be be awesome once we get it done. And I'm so grateful to all of the CTPS staff that have really busted their humps on this. So I'm sure you all can't wait to see the draft, and it'll be here very soon, and you'll all have plenty of time to review it. And Mr. Chair, I hope we can allocate plenty of time to discuss it once we get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Any questions from the members? And much like Brian, Eric and I and Dagan all want to make sure that everybody has time to read it and that we have time to discuss it in detail. So it will be taking up at least one, maybe more than one agenda in June/July. So please do pay attention. It's very important. Not that we don't pay attention to everything, because I'm sure you do. Next up is the Regional Transportation Council Advisory Report, or Advisory Council Report. Lynn?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. We had a really good meeting last week, and so Judy Taylor from CTPS came to talk with us about resiliency and how the MPO is incorporating that, into just planning, with respect to, especially with respect to the next LRTP. It was well attended. There was lots of energy at the meeting. It seems like it is a topic that people care about a lot. You'll probably see that, well, you will see that in our comment letter on the TIF. And Judy had a great presentation, which is now part of the materials. It gives you a really good kind of basis for having the conversation. It defines terms very well. And so I encourage everyone to check out those materials. And we'll be following up on this topic a lot in our upcoming meetings. And also I gave a little update to the board. I'm sorry, the committee, the council being on my vote being at the last meeting regarding the the allocations for the programs in our next long-range transportation plan. And so there's a lot of discussion about that, and we'll be following up on that a fair amount. And we are certainly looking forward to the needs assessment, which we'll be getting today, because based on that, I think the advisory council will have some more thoughts about how we should allocate funds, and we'll be reporting back to the board on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn. Any questions for Lynn? Seeing none, next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from April 13th. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the minutes? Please state your name for the record. Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, I'll make a motion to approve the April 13th MPO meeting minutes.
Brian Kane.
I second Eric's motion.
Motion have been made and seconded. Are there any comments, changes, questions, or suggestions? Seeing none, please call the roll.
David Muller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Allie Clayman,
Allie Clayman, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Brian Kane,
Brian Kane, yes.
Leonard Diggins,
Leonard Diggins, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Fitzgerald, yes.
David Kosis,
David Kosis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Christy Orio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
and Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Great. Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is TIP Amendment 4 to the 2023 TIP. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everybody. My name is Ethan Lapointe. I am the Transportation Improvement Program Manager with the Boston Region MPO. The purpose of this first presentation this morning is to summarize some of the content of TIP Amendment 4 prior to a vote to endorse Amendment 4, which has completed a 21-day public comment period. The summary of Amendment 4, for a refresher, include the programming of a federal SMART grant award for the Metro West RTA, 2 cost increases for MassDOT highway projects, updates to the MBTA's programs to reflect some of the funding levels in its capital investment plan, and also the programming of several awards that the MBTA has received through federal competitive discretionary grant opportunities from FTA. With that, there were no comments received during the 21-day public comment period, which lasted from April 14th to May 5th, and therefore there need not be any review of those comments because they don't exist. Should that be the case, and if there's any agreement, staff are requesting that the board votes to endorse Amendment 4 and the projects contained therein.
Thank you, Ethan. Any questions for Ethan? Seeing none, can I get a motion in a second to adopt the amendment as presented? Eric Barassa.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to adopt the amendment as presented.
Lynn Diggins.
I'll second it. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Allie Clayman,
Allie Clayman, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Brian Kane,
Kane, yes.
Leonard Diggins,
Leonard Diggins, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Fitzgerald, yes.
David Kosis,
David Kosis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Christy Orio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
and Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Great. Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Judy. And Matt Moran has now entered the room, so make sure you add him to the roll call for the next item.
Will do. Thanks.
Thank you. Next item is amendment number 6 to the FY23 TIP. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the next line item here is the Amendment 6 to the federal fiscal years 2023 to 27 TIP. This presentation will cover the content of Amendment 6 and introduce it with a conclusion to vote to release this amendment for a 21-day public comment period. Amendment 6 proposes several changes for grant programming for a Salem ferry retrofit, as mentioned earlier in this meeting, from the city of Salem for a grant award to maintain the existing Salem ferry, in addition to funding source adjustments to the Lynn Station Improvements Phase 2 and Forest Hills Improvement Project. These are source adjustments only and do not change the budgets for those projects. Furthermore, there are some cost changes for the Lynn and Nahant Northern Strand Extension Project and a new start year for a grade crossing project in Framingham, which has actually been accelerated out of federal fiscal year 2024 into the current fiscal year of 2023. We could go on to the next slide just to look at this in a little bit more detail, project by project. As mentioned, for the fiscal year's 2023 transit program, there is a new project that is programming funding awarded through a US DOT passenger ferry grant program that was initially awarded back, I believe, 2020, and is now being programmed to support the retrofit of an existing ferry for the city of Salem. The total value of the grant award is $3.4 million with matching funds leading it up to $4 million, as shown on screen here. On the next slide, To move on to the Regional Target Highway Program, there are 2 MBTA projects here that are funded by the MPO that are having source changes adjusted. This was due to a database error within the funding management system that the MPO uses. There are no overall changes to the project budgets here, these being the Lynn Station Improvements Phase 2 project with a budget of $13.6 million and the Forest Hills Improvement Project with a budget in the current 2023 to 27 tip of $6.4 million. These sources have also been adjusted based on updated guidance from MassDOT on the eligibility of certain source uses. Again, to reiterate, the budget for these projects remains the same in the current tip, but as some may recall, as part of the federal fiscal years 2024 to 28 tip, the Forest Hills Improvement Project is being deprogrammed once that tip is endorsed and in effect in October 2023. With that, to move on to the next slide and look more closely at the next project, there are 2 on the screen here. This includes the Lynn Nahant Northern Strand Extension. This project's budget has increased from a $9.3 million project value up to a $10.9 million budget, which is a total delta of about $1.6 million. The reason why this change occurred was the project has recently received a 100% design level and is approaching advertising for bids. However, the understanding is that some of those bids have come in higher than anticipated due to inflationary pressures surrounding cost materials, labor, and other items. For the other statewide highway program project in Framingham, for a grade crossing at Route 126 is the high-risk at-grade railroad crossing countermeasures project on Route 126, which is a major safety hazard location within the community of Framingham. This project, because of that status, is being accelerated out of federal fiscal year 2024 up into federal fiscal year 2023, retaining its total budget of $3.5 million, but just moving up in year. With that, staff are requesting that the board release Amendment 6 for a 21-day public comment period, with public comment commencing tomorrow, May 19th, and continuing for 21 days until June 9th of 2023.
Thank you, Ethan. Questions for Ethan? Seeing none, can I get a motion in a second to release this for a 21-day public comment period? Please state your name for the record. Director Rassel.
I will make another motion to approve this tip Amendment 6 as presented.
For release. This is for release.
This is for release for public comment, for 21-day public comment.
Thank you, Eric. Dennis Giambetti.
I'll second that.
Motion having been made and seconded, please call the roll.
David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Allie Clayman,
Allie Clayman, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Ryan Kane,
Kane, yes.
Leonard Diggins,
Leonard Diggins, yes.
Matt Moran,
Matthew Moran, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Fitzgerald, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
and Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is another tip amendment. This one's number 7. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As mentioned earlier in this presentation, tip Amendment 7 for the federal fiscal years 2023-27 tip is a special circumstance. This amendment only contains one proposed project change within the federal fiscal years 2023 program. Amendment 7 proposes the addition of one new project, which is a ferry boat capital funding allocation for the MBTA's catamaran overhaul project. If we can go on to the next slide, just to look at this project in more detail. This project uses funding from the federal fiscal year's 2020 ferry boat program and is being carried forward into federal fiscal year 2023 to obligate the funding before its expiration. This funding would support the overhaul of an MBTA catamaran ferry, and the funding must be executed before the MBTA can apply for additional discretionary grant funding this summer. Moreover, it must also be programmed before the formula funding expires this year. Staff are requesting on the next slide that the board votes to endorse Amendment 7 and thereby waiving the 21-day public comment period. The public engagement plan for the MPO states that in emergency circumstances, such as when there is a need to take immediate action to protect public safety, or in this case, to take advantage of an extraordinary funding opportunity, the MPO board may waive the public comment period for an amendment.
Thank you, Ethan. Questions for Ethan? Eric Barassa.
So is this ferry service for the city of Lynn? Is that what I know? Tom Devine came on earlier, said he was available to.
Tom Devine was for the city of Salem, which was the last amendment we did.
That was the last one.
Okay. This one is for the MBTA. I'm not sure which ferry, but Ally might know, but it's not Lynn.
Okay.
Brian King.
Sir, I believe Mr. Dickens was ahead of me.
Oh, thank you, Lynn Dickens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, kind Mr. Kane. You know, this is more just a curiosity question, about the funding. So you're saying that we had funding in 2020 that is available now, but it's going to expire soon, right? I'm just trying to understand. I don't know. I'm not critical. I support this fully. I'm just kind of understanding.
Yeah. So the answer is yes. So this funding was made available in 2020. For whatever reason, it hasn't been programmed yet. We're now at the place where if we don't program it now, it will expire. That's why we're trying to get it programmed now to keep it expiring.
I understand.
Yeah.
So I'm good. Go ahead, please. I interrupted. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. That's all I got on that.
Okay. All right. So then it expires this year.
Yes, at the end of this year, so it expires September 30th.
Yeah, I'm always trying to get a handle on when the funds expire. And of course, I'm interested in them for whatever reason, but I understand that means that I'm not going to find out anytime soon. And that's okay. That's just all curiosity. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yep, Ryan King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to urge my fellow board members to support this. While the waiving of the comment period is extraordinary, everything the T does is via a public process, including public procurements that are rigorously vetted, both via its own internal procurement processes as well as overseen by procurement requirements of the Commonwealth. The project here has been included in the MBTA CIP for several years, which undergoes a rigorous review process, including a detailed review by my organization. The boat in question, I'm not sure if it's the Champion or the Glory or one of the other vessels. It's probably one of the other vessels. These are used to move folks around Boston Harbor. I think we can all agree that the Inner Harbor, as well as the Hingham and Hull ferries, are something that we all value. We want to be pushing folks off of our roads. Clearly, Route 3 from Hingham and Hull does not need any additional vehicles put on it, nor do Inner Harbor routes between Charlestown and Rose Wharf. So I think that this meets the requirements of our policies. It will be incredibly publicly scrutinized and already has been. And so I would urge my fellow board members to support this requested action today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Any other comments from MPO members? Seeing none, can I get a motion in a second to waive the 21-day public comment period and endorse this amendment today? Brian Kane.
So move.
Is there a second? Lynn Diggins.
Lynn Diggins, so seconds.
Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Ally Clayman,
Ally Clayman, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassi, yes.
Brian Kane,
Kane, yes.
Leonard Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Matthew Moran,
Matt Moran, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Mr. Fitzgerald, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Tom Dent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Christy Orio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
and Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Great, motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a summary of the needs assessment findings. Betsy Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk today about some of the high-level takeaways from the needs assessment that we've conducted to support our current long-range plan development process for Destination 2050. Next slide, please. The needs assessment documents the transportation needs of our Boston region since the last LRTP was approved in the summer of 2019, with the focus on the years between 2019 and 2023. It looks at how people travel, the condition of the transportation facilities, the interaction of the transportation system with the built and natural environment, and how these elements could change in the future. It also supports decision-making in the LRTP by providing information about the most pressing transportation needs in our region, thereby shaping the MPO's vision, goals, and objectives, informing the kinds of investment programs that we develop and projects that we would prioritize for listing in the LRTP. Next slide. Although the needs assessment is just being wrapped up now, the activities that we undertook to complete it, which ranged from lots of various data collection activities, analyses, and public engagement, that has all been going on since the last LRTP was completed. So it's really a continuous process over a 4-year period. And what we've learned through these activities has been embedded in the products we've shared and recommendations that we've made as staff to the board, including the revised goals and objectives, and the vision and the new investment programs that were approved earlier this year. So while the needs assessment itself will be released to coincide with the release of the LRTP, the things that we've learned through that process have been integral to the creation of the LRTP itself. This ongoing nature of the needs assessment is also reflected in a new format. And I want to talk a little bit about this because this will be new for us as an agency. Instead of a PDF document, we will be sharing a series of 9 story maps, which are things, kind of documents that have a strong visual component, including interactive maps, charts, and tables. The format is much more accessible to the public, which allows us to display more information more concisely, and it's very easy for us to update more so than traditional PDF. And that will allow us to have a needs assessment that is updated more continuously rather than once every 4 years, allowing for a more timely reporting of the needs of the transportation in our region. Finally, I want to note that the official base year of the long-range plan and therefore the needs assessment is 2019, so kind of the first year of the LRTP process. But that is the year, as you know, that is prior to the pandemic. And so knowing how much things have changed since then, where possible, the needs assessment contains data during or post-pandemic. And we made efforts to compare kind of pre, during, and post-pandemic data where possible to show how transportation has changed as a result of pandemic. Next slide. So I'm going to go through each of the goal areas. As I mentioned, the needs assessment is really framed around those goal areas, the new ones that we've developed for the long-range plan, and point out some of the high-level needs that we've found. I'll start just by reminding everyone of our new goal under each goal area, since some of them are fairly new, and to kind of ground us more in that topic. So starting with transportation equity, our new equity goal is to facilitate an inclusive and transparent transportation planning process and make investments that eliminate transportation disparities borne by people in disadvantaged communities. Now, in the last needs assessment, transportation equity had its own chapter. This year, we're structuring it slightly differently. We're still looking at equity through the perspective of the other goal areas. For example, who's bearing the burden of poor air quality and disproportionately more crashes, and which populations have access to different destinations and transportation services. However, these analyses are directly integrated into the other goal area story maps, which you'll see as we go through the presentation. The equity story map instead really focuses on the MPO's approach to equity in general, And then in terms of equity needs for the purposes of this presentation, I'll state those in the context of the other goal areas. Next slide. So we can move on to safety. Our new safety goal is to achieve zero transportation-related fatalities and serious injuries and improve safety for all users of the transportation system. Some of the needs that we found in our needs assessment process was the need to invest in safety interventions in areas with the most vulnerable road users, including equity populations and bicyclists, pedestrians, knowing that crashes have increased since the pandemic began. We also noted that investment in preventative countermeasures is very important, especially those that have been identified as high risk, so that we can prevent kind of crashes, severe and fatal crashes before they actually happen. With new data available to us, that was a kind of a new analysis we were able to look at. In terms of crash clusters, which are areas where crashes are most frequent and the most severe, we also want to make sure that we're prioritizing investments and interventions in those locations where we see existing crash clusters with fatalities and injuries. Next slide. So if we move on to our next goal area, this is a new one for us, mobility and reliability. And our goal is to support easy and reliable movement of people and freight. When we think about mobility, some of the needs that we found were to improve the mobility of buses on high delay corridors where there's significant congestion that might reduce the ability or reduce the speeds of those bus routes. Increase mode shift from single occupancy vehicles to public transit and active transportation, particularly in the light of the pandemic and some of the changes away from public transit that we've seen. Improve bicycle mobility by expanding the bicycle networks and the Blue Bikes bike share system. Address congested corridors through strategies like mode shift, parking demand management, transit-oriented development, and other strategies. We also looked at infrastructure condition of infrastructure across our region, and we found that it was important. We need to continue to upgrade and modernize the public transit facilities and rolling stock and improve state of good repair, particularly in the realm of track maintenance. Next slide. Another new goal area for us is access and connectivity. And our goal is to provide transportation options and improve access to key destinations to support economic vitality and high quality of life. In the realm of access to transportation infrastructure and services, we want to continue to expand transit access and increase frequency to equity populations, including the bicycle network and bike share. In the realm of destination access, we found that there are disparities in access to various destinations, particularly for minority and low-income communities. And so there's a need to continue to make sure that we improve access to those destinations, such as parks and other important destinations that are important to quality of life. And when we looked at connectivity of the transportation network, one thing we found was that we actually do need better data when we're thinking about and looking at the connectivity of pedestrian facilities, including sidewalks and crosswalks, to make sure that folks have equal access and are able to get to the destinations by foot that they'd like to get to. The data is not as good as we'd like it, and so there's a big need to improve that data source. We also need to close gaps in the bicycle network. We were able to look at roads with a high propensity for bicycling, roadways that go to destinations that are important to folks. And so that focusing on building protected bicycle facilities on those important roadways that lead to destinations that folks want to reach is an important need for our region. And then when we think about transit connectivity, we want to make sure to improve coordination between transit services to provide seamless public transit service across our region. For us is resiliency. And our new resiliency goal is to provide transportation environments and enables people to respond and adapt to climate change and other changing conditions. We looked at various aspects of climate impacts, including flooding due to storms and sea level rise. And it's important that we continue to adapt infrastructure to minimize those flooding impacts, prioritizing equity areas that folks are able to continue to access the transportation that they need to get to their jobs and do the other things that contribute to a good life. We also looked at extreme heat impacts. And so we need to make sure that infrastructure is adapted to withstand those extreme heat changes that are expected due to climate change, and use nature-based solutions to reduce flooding and impacts of high heat, focusing on areas with populations that are particularly sensitive to heat, including communities with older adults and children. And finally, regional coordination. Since climate change is a big problem that really needs to be tackled regionally and nationally, we need to ensure that there is engagement between the MPO and municipalities so that we can collaborate successfully on climate resilience. Next slide. And our last goal area is clean air and healthy communities. Our goal statement is to provide transportation free of greenhouse gas emissions and air pollutants, and that supports good health. One way to help reduce pollutants is, of course, to reduce SOV travel, single occupancy vehicle travel, through mode shift and other strategies such as travel demand management and roadway pricing. And another strategy can be to electrify the transportation network, such as expanding electric vehicle charging stations and electrifying the public transit and freight networks. We also need to ensure that we're prioritizing air quality improvements in areas that have borne a disproportionate burden of air quality impacts, those communities that are near roadways and other sources of mobile source emissions, and where folks are more prone and more susceptible and are more exposed to damaging air quality emissions. Next slide. So that kind of wraps up some of the high-level needs that we found throughout our needs assessment process. I want to emphasize again that our needs assessment really begins at the start of each 4-year LRGP cycle. It's ongoing, and through the rollout of the needs assessment, with the LRGP itself, the input we've received through the analysis and public engagement has informed all of the staff recommendations and discussions that we've had with the board over the past several years. Our new format with the story maps will make it easier for people to engage with their work and be better informed about transportation in the region. And I hope that it'll also help all of you stay better informed around the transportation needs throughout kind of at a regular basis rather than just once every 4 years. We plan on rolling out the needs assessment in the coming weeks with the expectations that they will be released online all at once shortly after the LRTP is voted out for public comment in June. So with that, I can wrap up and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Any questions for Betsy? Lynn Diggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to add, along with extreme heat, we should maybe also think about extreme cold, because that morning where I think we went 10 below zero, I was on a train stuck in Providence because there was a frozen track preventing me from getting to Boston. So it's a thing in a climate that's warming that we can expect some extreme cold. That's just more as a humorous comment. So were you planning on doing any scenario exploration? I kind of remember that from early on that we were thinking about exploring scenarios.
Not directly with the projects that are have been proposed for funding or proposed for listing in the LRTP. There may be, some things that we can do kind of going forward. I think there's definitely interest in exploring that in more detail, but we weren't able to kind of look at specific scenarios in the context of this LRTP.
I got it, because what I ask is that it can help us determine what would be, preferable levels of allocations for the various programs, because that's where I'm hung up, is that I'm looking for some guidance as to how to intelligently, determine what percentages we should allocate to our various projects. And lots of people here are a lot smarter than me, so they may not need that assistance. But for me, I'm trying to make the case for any given percentage of allocation, any program. So maybe I'll talk with you more. But that's where I'm just kind of stuck. And so if you have any you can tell me now that can maybe help me get unstuck, that would be great. And certainly since the needs assessment, we're not going to get any of this in more detail until after the LRTP is released. I really hope that we will listen to comments from everyone and be really open to revising our target percentage allocations based on those comments in the final version that we sign off on. That's it. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Len. I'm happy to talk offline if you'd like more. And we do hope that the needs assessment, the new format, will really enable that to be easier going forward, so that it will be maintained and updated on a regular basis, so that you can have access to that information throughout. Whenever you'd like, not just kind of during the end of the LRTP. So that's helpful for us to know that that's important for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Betsy. Good work as always. Next item on the agenda. Oh wait, Brian Kane, do you have a question? I'm sorry.
I did. Sorry, a little late there. Just a comment more than a question, Mr. Chair. So Betsy and everyone, I would hope that when doing this, we would reference a couple of things. The fourth worst traffic in the world, according to certain measurements. Anyone who's been on 90 on the expressway recently can attest. Took me 40 minutes to get from the South Boston bypass to the Braintree split on a Thursday at 11 o'clock in the morning recently. So I would suggest that we reference that and consider ways to mitigate it through reducing the number of single occupancy vehicle trips. And I would also suggest that we include the many legal requirements that the state and implementing agencies are currently operating under as we try to achieve a long-range vision, specifically electrification of our bus network by 2040, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I would suggest that we attempt to try and meet our targets that are in state law. And we also try to mitigate our congestion, which is not good for anybody, especially the folks that live around it. Thank you very much. And sorry I was late to the punch there.
No worries, Brian. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Betsy. Next item on the agenda is a presentation on the Sumner Tunnel roadway project. John Romano and Mike Drew, whenever you guys are ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You all know me as a member of the MPO, John Romano. The other part of my life, I'm working in Ledge Affairs for MassDOT. We're here today with this important project, a regionally significant piece of infrastructure that we're going to be doing a complete restoration on. As Tegan mentioned at the beginning of the meeting today, the MPO has provided partial funding to the tune of approximately $22 million over FY22 and 23. So the MPO has skin in the game for this project, which we are appreciative of. I'd like to thank Judy Taylor for her help over the last couple of days getting the presentation loaded. It was interesting trying to get that to her, but thank you, Judy. We appreciate it. I put my contact information, both phone number and email, in the chat. So after the presentation, if anybody would like any materials, would like us to come to you and do a briefing or get you any other materials, we'd be happy to do so. We did provide some materials to Judy, and please help us get the word out about this important project. Mike Drew from MassDOT is going to go through the presentation with some assistance in the traffic portion by Gary McNaughton from McMahon Associates. We do have several people from Mass DOT in various capacities to answer questions at the end. So thank you for your time. And with that, I will turn it over to Mike Drew.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Drew. I'm a design build project manager with Highway Division. Just to give you an idea on the Sumner Tunnel project, one of the key elements that we're really putting forward to the public is right now we're planning an 8-week full shutdown of the tunnel during the summertime of 23 and 24. We're going to be we've been conducting weekend shutdowns, but basically engaging in a very active public engagement program now building up towards that shutdown. So to give you a brief overview of the project, so the Sumner Tunnel project is a full rehabilitation of the tunnel. We have a design build contract with JF White as well as with McMillan Jacobs and McMahon Associates as designers. The project bid price was approximately $136 million. The bid was accepted on June 26th of 21. Some of the major completion of the major items will be in September of 24, with final completion scheduled for December of 24. Next slide, please. The project scope. So the Sumner Tunnel is one of the oldest tunnels in the country. It's about 90 years old, and with that type of age and service life, the deterioration is going to be typical of any of our infrastructure of that age. On the right-hand side, you can see a couple of pictures. The top one is of the upper ceiling. That ceiling is what you see from the roadway, as well as below that is the actual arch of the tunnel above that ceiling. Both you can see along the walls and just in a general sense, the level of deterioration that's really warranting a full structural rehabilitation. We're also going to be updating all the systems, including the lighting, communications, and the infrastructure for those systems. And then also we're working currently in the vent buildings in East Boston and the North End to bring the pumping systems and ventilation systems up to full standards, as well as thinking about and planning for and implementing items to improve environmental resiliency. Next slide, please. Here's a graphic of the actual tunnel. So again, when you're driving through the tunnel, you'd be driving on the roadway deck, which is illustrated in yellow, and then you'd be seeing up above the tunnel ceiling, which is illustrated in blue. But the tunnel is actually a full tube tunnel. Above and below are exhaust vents above and fresh air vents below. One thing to note with this is if you look from curb to curb, the tunnel is only about 23 feet wide. That's very important to keep in mind, because when we're doing these full shutdowns, we're doing the heavy type of construction that really is going to take up all that 23-foot width. Even putting one construction vehicle in there, you really fills up that space. So going from clockwise, one of the things we're going to be doing is lining that upper arch with precast concrete liner segments. We're also going to be replacing the ceiling with precast concrete elements, and that's an accelerated construction technique that we're utilizing to really be able to do that in an efficient way during the shutdown. We're also along the walls going to be replacing, doing wall repairs and installing fireproofing panels. For the roadway deck in the summer of 24, we're going to be taking that deck completely out of service, and we're going to be not just replacing the wearing surface, but actually the structural concrete. We're going to be replacing the top portion with an ultra-high performance concrete to bring that up to modern truck loading. We're also going to be doing miscellaneous repairs in the supply plenums, and then obviously replacing the lighting and systems. Next slide, please. Here's a general schedule. At this time last year, we were planning on 36 weekend shutdowns and then a full 16-week closure that would be taking place currently and then lasting into September. So we worked with our design build team to look for ways to reduce that impact. And what we're doing now is concentrating that full shutdown during the summertime months where the traffic volumes are historically low. So right now we're looking at completing the weekend closures that have been going on since the springtime, building towards a July 5th to August 31st full closure. Again, weekend shutdowns, not to the magnitude of the 2022 to 23 period, but we will be conducting weekend shutdowns over the course of the following year, building up towards another full closure during the summertime of July and August of 24. And then there'll be several weekend closures for finishing work, punch list items, that type of thing. Next slide, please. One of the main things with this project is the traffic impact. So we all know the type of congestion that's already out there in and around the Sumner and Ted Williams Tunnel and the airport. And with this closure, we are anticipating significant impact. So we're not sugarcoating that. We are advertising and putting out to the public and looking to provide various mitigation strategies for the public so that they can plan for the closure and work around it. And that would be to say, utilizing public transit, commuter rail, the ferry service from East Boston, and then also utilizing alternative routes to stay out of the area if they can. Next slide, please. Right now, again, with the significant impact that this project is going to be having, we are doing working with adjacent projects in various ways. One of the things that we're doing is accelerating some of those projects to get that work done prior to the closure, as well as during the closure. Really, we're just going to be allowing emergency maintenance type of work in the area. Next slide, please. Some of the innovations that are being utilized, we had mentioned the precast arch and the precast ceiling elements. Those precast concrete actually have fibers mixed in with them to provide fire protection. It's something that has been research and testing has been conducted with UMass Amherst and utilizing that technology for that precast elements. We're also going to be grouting that precast arch along the existing arch layer to really seal that arch very well. Next slide, please. Again, here's some photos of what is being seen during the actual rehabilitation. On the left-hand side, you see what would be the existing tunnel prior to construction. On the right-hand side, what we've done currently is we've removed approximately 500 feet of that ceiling, as well as started to prepare that arch up above. And then we'll be implementing kind of mock-up and test panels, installing some of those concrete panels to really get the lessons learned now so that during the full shutdown, we'll be ready for full production. Next slide, please. We've also implemented a working group structure. This is a model that was utilized for the Orange Line's closures of the summer of last year. And what we have is we have discipline-led working groups. Here you see public safety and traffic, transit and mobility, communication and outreach, as well as business coordination. In all those working groups that have the most knowledgeable staff, are not just within MassDOT, but within MBTA, Massport, business groups, etc. In those working groups are reporting up to management level principals bi-weekly to not only to make sure that we're fully prepared for the shutdown, but also to look for any items that we can utilize and come up with to mitigate the impacts that will occur with this shutdown. Next slide, please. Some of the alternative traffic mitigations that we've looked at, these items basically we've looked at multiple times at various, either during preliminary design or even recently. Some of the things that have been looked at and were utilized during the weekend closures and are being utilized are relief lane for Ted Williams. And that's a strategy to balance the traffic coming from the airport and Route 1A corridor. That will not be continuous during the week, during the full closure, but we utilize that at different times when the airport traffic particularly is at its maximum. We've also looked at a two-way direction traffic in the Callahan Tunnel. This has been modeled several times and looked at, and what we would really have seen and dismissed this strategy because it's from an operations and geometry standpoint, it really isn't feasible. It basically would cause such an operational impact to both ends of the Callahan in downtown Boston and then north of the tunnel that it would really cause more operational difficulties than keeping it the same. We also looked at a zipper lane for EMS in the Ted Williams Tunnel. Again, right now, the feedback from working very, very closely, even over the last year with EMS services during the weekend closures, what we've been, what has come from those conversations is that EMS can get through the Ted Williams Tunnel because there's shoulders in there that people can pull aside. In looking at putting a zipper lane in there, again, similar to the Callahan, the operational impacts to either side of the tunnel become so severe that it really creates more problems than in the end. Next slide, please. Again, public safety is the number one concern that we've been looking at during this closure, during planning for this closure. Start before the weekend closures in spring of 2022, we started working very closely with emergency services, police and fire. We have an incident operations plan that's in place and for the weekend closures, as well as have been conducting working group meetings throughout this springtime with the public safety representatives. And out of those conversations, what has really been identified is some practical ways that EMS has asked for assistance with to really maintain their full operational capacity, as well as redundant capacity during the closure. And MassDOT is going to be providing EMS services with 2 additional ambulances for day shift, evening shift, so that they can support these additional shifts during the shutdown. Next slide, please. Again, reducing the impacts. Right now, our main approach is really to get single occupant vehicles out of the area during the shutdown and look for anyone that has that opportunity to utilize a mode shift. So for the East Boston, North End area, some of the items that will be of use for those residents are discounted tolls for the Tobin Bridge. We're also going to be providing the ferry service from East Boston to downtown. We're going to be providing that during the shutdown, but also making that free. We're also going to be providing free monthly passes for July and August for residents that are part of the resident discount toll program, as well as residents in Revere and in Winthrop. We're also going to be providing additional MBTA parking, and then also looking at signal timings in the area or in the neighborhoods during the shutdown for improvements. We're also going to be encouraging the North Shore communities to stay out of the area by reducing commuter rail tolls, commuter rail fares, as well as commuter rail parking in Salem and Swampscott and Beverly Depot and Rowley. We're also going to be providing on utilizing variable message signs in the North Shore area to notify those residents, even up towards the 93 and 95 corridors, that the closure is coming, so that they can plan ahead. With Logan Airport, we're also going to be working closely with discounts for Logan Express, real-time information for the shuttle service from the airport station and Silver Line shuttles, as well as providing, real-time data for them. Next slide, please. Again, during construction, this has been ongoing prior to the weekend shutdowns. Right now, MassDOT, has very high standards and specifications for the removal of construction debris as well as pest control. We've also been implementing real-time traffic monitoring system during the weekend closures, and we'll be doing that during the full closure. And also we have dust and noise control units. Basically, we're monitoring those type of construction impacts continuously during any work that's being done, and basically making sure that they don't exceed thresholds set by Mass DOT Highway Division in the City of Boston. And we have those monitors out there, so if any alerts get triggered, we can act on that immediately. We're also, as part of this contract, providing an incentive-disincentive program, not only to encourage the design-build team to finish and open the tunnel in a timely fashion, but providing monetary disincentives to them if that doesn't occur. Next slide, please. With the traffic diversions during preliminary design, we did significant modeling of what we would see during the closure. Again, a lot of this is approximate, but obviously the Ted Williams Tunnel, we're also going to see diversions toward the Route 1 corridor, as well as north through the Everett communities. We've also been utilizing much more specific traffic data during the weekend closures in building towards the full closure. Next slide. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and invite Gary McNaught with McMahon Associates, our lead traffic engineer.
Thanks, Mike. As Mike indicated, we do have the real-time traffic monitoring system in place so that we are able to view travel times. That's connected through the work zone. There's a number of cameras that we have in place at critical junction points, including the entrance to the Ted Williams Tunnel and some of the other critical roadways over by the airport. There's a series of portable message boards that you'll see out there during non-closure times right now, notifying motorists of upcoming closures, and then during the actual closures, informing motorists that the tunnel is closed, providing alternate route information or whatever may be appropriate for their location. We do have an intersection monitoring program that we've been doing on the weekends, with some in-person and in-field presence, as well as some remote monitoring through the RTTM system and other available sources for congestion monitoring and the like. One of the tools that's been extremely helpful for us is the RIDIS system that MassDOT's able to pull a lot of congestion information after the fact, and almost at times too much information to try to sift through, but it's been very helpful with some of the congestion scan and travel time information to be able to identify where are we seeing those problems, where are there areas that we can address as we work through those weekend closures and start to prepare for the long-term closures. One of the other things that MassDOT's developing is the travel time dashboard, so that motorists will be able to go online ahead of time and see how long they can expect their trips to take, following the various detour routes, and that will be updated as we get into the full-time closures, so they will be populated and updated with real-time information once we get into those closures. Next slide. So as we talked about the real-time traffic monitoring system, and this, you'll see the orange squares, those are meant to be portable message signs. Those are just one layer of that system that's in place. We have a number of cameras, radar sensors, and other tools through the project area, and this is all accessible to the project team via a website where we can monitor how traffic is flowing, what situations and what incidents may be occurring out in the area. This is also supplemented by the regional overhead signs that are in place and some of the other tools that most Massport and MassDOT have for getting that message out to motorists, far and wide beyond just the immediate project area, and then for monitoring those traffic operations throughout any of the closures. Next slide. As was touched upon, the monitoring locations. So there are 13 specific locations that we are monitoring. And as we get into the full-time closure, we will have, folks in the field observing these locations, looking at areas where we may be able to make adjustments. We've been making some adjustments already in terms of changes to traffic control or changes to signal timing, particularly in the Chelsea neighborhoods, as we're seeing that pattern where folks are trying to access Route 1 from the East Boston area. But in addition to these 13 areas, we're monitoring the broader area, and as hotspots pop up, as things come up, we're addressing them. We know during the earlier part of the spring here, we had some issues in Everett with some access over there, and we're reacting and monitoring those and seeing if there are changes that we can make to alleviate any of those hotspots. Next slide. The Mass 511 project information, as I noted, this is under development, and this will have the travel time information and be available to motorists. So we'll be getting this information out more to the public to let them know that this is there. They can go to this tool, see travel time information, what to expect, what's happening, what happened, just prior, during this closure, not looking just at Google Maps data for travel times, but something a little more specific and up to date based on the closure information. So we're hopeful this will be a valuable tool to motorists and others trying to travel through the area. Next slide. And with that, I think I'd pass it back to Mike to talk about some of the other communications.
Thank you, Gary. Again, similar to what we did in the spring of 2001, building up towards the weekend closures, we're having a full, robust public engagement program that's very active right now, building towards the full closure. We've also been maintaining communication tools with a dedicated website, email, as well as hotline over the course of the last year that will continually be in place during the full closure. Next slide, please. Some of the public outreach that we've been conducting is briefings and legislative meetings with elected officials, as well as with stakeholder and community groups within the East Boston and North End area, as well as direct outreach and really anyone that has the opportunity, to allow us to come and get them updated. We've also been conducting full public information meetings that we've conducted two back in March. We have two coming up next week on Thursday, the 24th and 25th of next week. We're also going to be doing two additional full public information meetings in June prior to the full shutdown. We've also been doing direct outreach with neighborhood pop-up tents. We've been, flyering local residents, particularly abutters that are in and around the portals, and basically flyering them directly when we're planning on activities that are going to have additional noise. We've also been out doing full outreach with businesses and community organizations, as well as the rideshare companies. We've also been providing, again, full continuous updated information on our project website, as well as conducting emails to EasyPass holders, to social media, and then also press briefings and releases. We've also been really trying to do this even down to grassroots by visiting community events such as Little League opening, visiting and putting pop-up tents over by Chelsea Market Basket, as well as Mayor Wu's coffee hours in different parks, and different grassroots items like that. Next slide, please. Again, some of the activities that are going to be building. Currently, we've been conducting throughout the course of really the last couple of months, most recently with different neighborhood organizations like Jeffrey's Point, briefed the city of Boston last week, as well as different organizations, commercial organizations, for instance, TNC operators, Massport Cargo Consortium, the taxi industry, etc., and also briefing elected officials, and we'll be briefing the full State House next week. And then again, different organizations similar to yourselves. Next slide, please. Again, some of the activities that are ongoing through May and June, very similar to what we had mentioned before with different pop-ups similar to libraries in the supermarket, etc. We're also, again, going to be conducting full public information meetings on May 24th and 5th, and then also providing updated information via the website, email, social media, those type of things we had mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. Project communications. Again, we're really not sugarcoating this in any way. What the message that we are putting out is for the public to understand the impacts of the congestion due to the shutdown and plan ahead. And right now, the main message that we are putting out is specifically mode shift. And if you do not have to travel through the area, use alternative routes, but also utilize some of those mitigation strategies that we're looking to encourage and provide assistance with in the form of transit, commuter rail, ferry service, etc., as well as that most up-to-date travel information to utilize alternative routes. Next slide, please. Again, first full closure is going to be this summertime. We are conducting weekend closures building up towards that, but the 8-week closure will be occurring from July 5th to August 31st. Put that in between the summertime holidays. We also, again, have the project communication tools that have been established and are ongoing in the form of our project website, dedicated email address, and hotline. And why don't we go ahead and keep that slide up for anyone that wants to take that information down, and we'll open it up for any comments or questions.
Thank you very much.
Dave, before we jump to questions, just one thing I just wanted to add. Posted in the chat is like up here, a link to the website. There's also a flyer for the public meetings next week that Mike mentioned. And there's also a link that you can sign up for weekly updates, which include the weekly shutdowns, the weekend shutdowns. Also, you'll get updates on the closure for the 8-week closure for this year and next, all the way up through and including the completion of the project next year. So you can sign up. We send up updates every single week. So those are all in the chat, posted in the chat. So
thank you, John.
Thank you.
Questions from any MPO members? Brian King.
John, Mike, Gary, thanks for the update. Tough project, but a critical one. And let me just encourage you to do it right. And let's make sure we do this well, as I know you folks will. I just wanted to note that I'm someone that thinks that public infrastructure matters and it should be not only functional, but beautiful. And I just wanted to encourage you, and this is perhaps a little odd to hear, to do some preservation work on the signage at the north end entrance to the tunnel, where there's those beautiful angels and the beautiful writing that we have up there. If we can preserve that and make it cool again and clean, and also some additional signage to note who William Hyslop Sumner was. He was a great early American. And millions of people go through his tunnel, a tunnel named for him every year, but I don't think many folks know who he is. He was instrumental in founding, in getting East Boston going and everything else. So perhaps you won't, let this be hopefully the least angry comment you get, but you got to do it, and we got to fix our infrastructure. So thanks for doing it, and I wish you the best of luck.
No, and Brian, just to give you an idea of the rehabilitation that's happening at the portals, right now we have Daedalus. Daedalus is a restoration specialist. We, in the contract, included 3 acceptable restoration specialists based off of what the Highway Division has seen and utilized in the past. So Daedalus is the subcontractor that the design build team brought on board, and all the bronze has been removed and is being fully refurbished over at their Watertown facility, as well as any missing lettering, that type of thing. They really do a lot of, really great work, including a lot of the bronze work in and around, the State House, etc. They also did all the bronze work for the Longfellow project that really got a lot of awards, the bronze sconces in doors and that type of thing. And then we also have United Stone, who did all the granite work for the Longfellow project, repairing the granite at the portals.
Excellent. Lynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So wouldn't it be great if the people who mode shifted to the blue line or transit, during this shutdown decided to stay there, and I'm wondering what it might take to make that happen. And I know we're out of cycle for maybe getting the CTP, a UPWP study, but the MBTA often will ask staff to do studies. And so I will circle back to Ally to find out if anything's going on along those lines. Maybe the MBTA is trying to take advantage of this situation to encourage people to permanently mode shift. And if so, maybe let us know what they're doing, because I think this is a good opportunity for that. Thank you.
Yep. Sarah Lee.
Hi, good morning. Just wanted to say thanks to the MassDOT team for coming and presenting this work and helping to get the word out. We at Massport know this is going to be a really big, impactful project, and expect a lot of delays here at the airport on our roadways. So just wanted to further encourage anybody who's traveling in July and August to avoid personal drop-offs. Anybody going in and out of the Ted Williams Tunnel, it's going to be very slow, and a lot of people may be rerouted in directions that they don't want to go, just because we're going to kind of be in survival mode over here. So, so public transit is wonderful. Blue line, water, those are going to be the least impacted modes of travel. Silver line we love, but that's going to be in the Ted Williams Tunnel with everybody else. So just wanted to encourage everybody to really think about how they and their families are going to be getting to the airport. Please share the word with your friends and family, and just know that if you're in a vehicle trying to come in or out of the airport, that you're going to want to have a lot of additional time factored into your travel. So I'm here and happy to answer any questions. We are very intimately involved with all of these details, and really appreciate all the work that the MBTA and MassDOT have put into this. So just wanted to echo my thanks, and just encourage you all to really think about how you're going to get here and make sure you have enough time to do so. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I'd really like to second some of those comments, that anything that you and your organizations can do, to really put out the word, is just going to be, a more use, in aid what we're doing by broadcasting this, not just the highway division, but utilizing any mechanism that Massport and MBTA have, that we've been partnering together to get the word out.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, thanks guys, it was a great presentation.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mike.
And I believe the next item on the agenda is member items. Is that correct? Yes. Are there any items from the members? Seeing and hearing none, can I get a motion in a second to adjourn? And please state your name for the record for making the motion. Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Brian King.
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Without objection, we are adjourned. See everybody at the next meeting. Bye, everybody.